afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Data-Driven Wellbeing, Enhancing Wellbeing Through Effective Data session. My name is Emily Pearson, so it's great to see so many of you here today, and I'm the founder and managing director at Our Minds Work. And I can see a lot of people in the room so far who I don't know, so I will tell you a little bit about Our Minds Work in a moment. But what I would love to do first off is just introduce you to Charlie Winton from OK Positive. Charlie is the founder of OK Positive, and we've been working together in the workplace wellbeing space for quite a few years now. Kept in touch with Charlie and following all the amazing work that he's doing over OK Positive in terms of employee wellbeing. But I'll let Charlie introduce himself to you all and tell you a little bit about Charlie's journey into how he became the founder of OK Positive and what the mission of OK Positive is.
Amazing, thank you, Emily. And yeah, hi everyone. I see some friendly faces and like loving meeting new people as well. I well, it's 5 and a bit years ago now. I worked in recruitment for my sins, and while I love the job, the kind of operating model and the KPIs, the pressures and the stress took a toll on me personally. I'm someone who's always struggled with OCD and anxiety, even from a young child kind of perspective. But in the workplace, it got to a crisis point where it started affecting my health, my relationships, my personal life, and I wanted to get out of that job and start something else. But one of the things that I found was my mental health was very unique to me, and my issues were very different to other people that I knew that were going through things. And so I wanted to create ways for people to have access to that instantly based on the root cause of what they're going through, and also to help organizations like the one I was in that was losing £2.5 million a year. As I was being trained to be a manager, I saw all of their statement of operations, and it was because of 3 main challenges: that they weren't gathering data on, they weren't listening, they weren't being proactive. So that's kind of led me to where I am now. And after doing this for 5 years, I've been speaking to people in technology, in ESG, in regulation, in workplace well-being, safeguarding, and so kind of built up a fair bit of insight and knowledge on that, which I'll be sharing a lot of today. So excited to be here. Thank you, Emily.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Charlie. So we're going to hear more from Charlie as we go. Just before we move on, I just want to tell you a little bit about Our Minds Work. So Our Minds Work, where we basically help HR and wellbeing leads to develop and deliver effective mental health and wellbeing strategies. And we've been doing that now for the past 5 years. And we do that through a range of services. We have our mental health and wellbeing diploma, which we have just opened the enrollment for, and we've got one of our diploma learners on already today, which is great to see you here. So our mental health and wellbeing diploma is specifically around building and delivering effective mental health and wellbeing strategies. We also provide preventing stress and support and mental health training for managers, and we have a 12-month workplace wellbeing membership, which is full of monthly consultancy, workshop development for your mental health first aid champions, advocates, and lots of education and mental health and wellbeing improvement for employees as well. So just a little bit about what we do. My background is health and social care, and I've worked in the field for over 25 years now. I feel very old when I say that, but I've worked in workplace mental health and wellbeing for the past 9 years. You will also see that we're joined by Emma Carhart today. She's one of my colleagues, and she is going to be supporting the chat box. But any questions, get them in there, and hopefully we'll answer them throughout today's session. So let's jump in. I mean, one of the reasons why we set up this webinar and invited Charlie along to talk was we've been collecting some data. We now have data from over 150 wellbeing leads and employers. And what we found was one of the biggest challenges about employee wellbeing was data collection. So we're going to start off with a little bit of a poll just to get some more insights. And thank you to those who've already completed the Wellbeing Strategy Maturity Assessment. I've got some insights from that as well today to share with you. So we'll have a little poll. I'll be sharing some of our insights from the wider assessment. And then just going to talk you through understanding the importance of data in shaping effective wellbeing strategies so that we really understand, well, why are we here today? Why is it so difficult to collect data, and what's really the importance of why we collect it and analyze and take action on it. We're going to go through a couple of practical methods for collecting and analysing wellbeing data as well. So we're looking at it in terms of a much broader aspect beyond just the individual's wellbeing data, and looking at it in terms of your wider wellbeing strategy. Charlie will be giving us lots of insights later on in the session around using technology, this wellbeing technology that OK Positive have been helping clients to improve employee wellbeing. So we've got lots of information from Charlie around what to do, what you can do, what's the impact of it, and sharing a little bit of insights on how they've already helped clients to achieve improved wellbeing as well. So let's get cracking. Let's go for this little poll. There's only 3 questions, so I'm just going to launch it here. It should just literally pop up on your screen. We've got 3 questions for you to answer. How are you currently collecting wellbeing data? Question number 2, what are your biggest challenges with wellbeing data if you are collecting it? And number 3, what outcomes do you want to achieve from your wellbeing data? 3 questions just to do a little bit of a deeper dive. If you complete those questions, then we can get a little bit of feedback, and I'll end the poll. And then I'll ask what Charlie's thoughts are on some of the answers that we've gained so far. Okay. Yeah, some of these are really quite common challenges as well that you're already experiencing. So we've just got a few more people left to participate.
It's very interesting to see the lack of engagement in surveys, which is something I'm quite keen to talk about, because it's every single person I'm speaking to is around that. And it's how can we use, that's one area I always find around technology. If you can ask questions without having to ask them or having to structure it, can be quite a powerful tool in that area. But yeah, it's really interesting to see that.
Excellent, great stuff. So pretty much, you know, across the board, 47% via employee surveys. So they seem to be very, very popular. 32% saying we aren't, which just echoes what we're already seeing in our maturity assessments. And just 5% saying specific wellbeing surveys. Nobody's collecting data through psychological risk management data, despite stress risk assessments being a legal requirement. This is what I keep bleating on about all the time. Nobody's using employee listening strategies to engage them in decision making. No one's using a wellbeing app. We've got 1 person using data on delivery of wellbeing initiatives, which is good to see somebody doing that. No one's using net promoter scores, and 2 people have said other. Number 2, what are your biggest challenges? So there we go, lack of engagement in surveys, just what you mentioned there, 50%. And, you know, we could probably do a whole webinar on why we might be seeing a lack of engagement in surveys to start off with. 7% poorly designed wellbeing data sets. Yeah, we see this all the time. You've got to be asking the right questions to get the answers that you need. So collecting data, but then a lack of analysis afterwards. And then we've got 21% saying other. So what outcomes do you want? So it's very clear that everybody wants some outcomes. Evidence improved well-being, absolutely. Evidence in the impact of your initiatives. Yeah, you've got to evidence that return on investment, don't you? And the value for your investment as well. Evidence in a cultural change around well-being, and evidence and wellbeing strategy outcomes. I think everyone's pretty clear that the whole goals that you want to achieve are pretty clear, but unfortunately, we're struggling to evidence those things. And that really echoes what we found across our wellbeing strategy maturity assessment insights. So I've got some insights. So thank you for completing it this morning, or beforehand when I did ask you to consider completing it. I hope you did find it useful, and you download the wellbeing ebook and strategy benchmarking tool. And if you haven't already, don't forget to take advantage of your complimentary one-to-one consultation with me around your answers and how to improve your wellbeing strategy. It's pretty clear from the data so far that the main goals of employers' wellbeing strategies are improving employee health and wellbeing over here with 21%. Improve workplace culture is just as important for your wellbeing strategy. Then we've got 19% increase employee engagement and satisfaction. Then we've got 14% with improved performance and productivity and employee loyalty and retention, with 9% being talent attraction. So improving employee well-being, huge goal in improving workplace culture and your employee engagement and satisfaction are the 3 top goals for a well-being strategy. We've also found that apart from your mental health pillar, there are also some very common well-being pillars embedded into your strategic well-being. So no surprise that menopause is at the top with 18% of workplaces having menopause-friendly workplaces as a strategic well-being pillar. We then have 16% with physical health and work-life balance. And then we've got 14% with financial well-being. And we've got some smaller well-being pillars there as well. So we know that this is a bit holistic. We've got some very clear strategic goals. We're looking at well-being as a bit more of a wider strategic impact. But one of the things that we've also found is 52% said that their mental health and well-being strategy and action plan isn't solution-focused and data-driven. So despite having clear goals, having a holistic idea of what well-being means to us in terms of employee well-being, we're just kind of guessing. We're not collecting data. It's not solution-focused and we're not data-driven. What we also found was that the effectiveness of mental health and wellbeing programs as well are often not being regularly assessed. So 53% said no, that those wellbeing programs are not being effectively assessed. So in terms of your investment in things like mental health first aid style programs, mental health and wellbeing training for managers, if your investment isn't being assessed, how do you know that it's working? How do we know that we're getting the outcomes that we need and achieving our wellbeing strategy goals? What we also found was that 62% are not using theories and models for health behavior and culture change. So if you want to improve, your biggest goal there is about improving employee well-being. We improve employee well-being by changing our health behaviors. And once our health behaviors change on a wider scale, we then get a cultural change and impact. So if we're not using models and theories for health behavior change, then we're not going to see it. We're going to struggle to evidence it as well. Excuse me. And then no wonder we're seeing such a high percentage, with 71% of wellbeing leads saying that no, they're not confident that their strategy will provide evidenced culture change outcomes and a maximum return on investment. So despite our goals, despite them being the right thing to do, the right thing to achieve, we're struggling to do it. We're struggling to evidence it. And this is leaving a lot of concern around, not being able to evidence it. The biggest challenges with your current mental health and wellbeing strategies are measuring your outcomes and returning on investment, ineffective data collection and analysis with 12%, poor employee engagement and wellbeing activities with 13% as well. So what we're actually seeing here, despite mental health and well-being, when it's improved, when culture changes, we see huge impacts in terms of business goals being achieved, in terms of creating great places to work where employees feel cared for, they want to stay, it attracts talent. We improve employee well-being, which means that therefore we see heightened levels of engagement, productivity, lowered levels of sickness absence and turnover. These are huge goals to achieve, But as what you can see so far is many wellbeing leads are struggling to do that. And one of these reasons, two of the reasons there is about data collection. So then why do we need data-driven decision making? I think it's pretty clear just from looking at some of those statistics there, is that if we don't do this, we cannot measure the objectives that we have. We can't get the insights. We can't achieve our goals. We don't even know what our goals are because we're just completely guessing at what they are. And what we often find is that well-being is then done to employees rather than them taking an active part in being part of those decisions around what employee well-being means to them. And even if they're ready for change, and what well-being pillars would they like to engage in terms of making changes to their well-being as well. And if we're not collecting data, what we find is that we get this one-size-fits-all approach, and we know that it doesn't work. We know that we're all on very different parts of the cycle of change in terms of what we want to change around our mental health and well-being. I had a session around this the other day, which many of you today were at, around engaging employees in well-being, which was about tapping into where we are on the cycle of change around what health behaviors that we do actually want to change so that we can be more personalized. But if we don't ask people, we don't know. So then we go down the one-size-fits-all route. And I think one of the other things that we've seen is very clearly on one of those charts there was how big menopause-friendly workplaces was, because it became a massive trend when obviously not everybody in the workplace is experiencing menopause and not experiencing it right now. Yet we saw this huge trend of that kind of one size fits all around menopause. So we need to be data driven around our decision making on well-being so that we can actually personalize these initiatives for our demographics in the workplace. We've also got to monitor the progress and the effectiveness. It's the so what. So we've trained 50 mental health first aiders. So what? Well, what does that actually mean? What are the benefits? What's the effectiveness? We've trained all of our managers in improving mental health in their teams. Okay, so what? How are we measuring that? Have you got data to say that you've changed their understanding around that? They're more confident in having conversations. They now know how to do things like stress risk assessments. So we've got to evidence the so what bit. And what we also want to be getting out of data-driven decision making is predicting and taking proactive measures so that we can engage more in prevention, especially around work-related stress and burnout, which we know is a legal requirement for employers to do, yet nearly 60% of wellbeing strategies do not include work-related stress prevention. And early intervention, before wellbeing problems actually escalate. Are we able to analyze data and know that there's something coming up the line in terms of wellbeing challenges for employees that we can actually tackle early? One of the things that we wanted to just cover as well is, well, how do you actually do that before I hand over to all the insights with Charlie? Collecting and analysing wellbeing data. As you've seen, everybody's kind of doing surveys at the moment, but there are other ways, there are other practical methods for collecting and analysing your wellbeing data. Obviously, everyone's doing surveys, but what we often find is that employee surveys only have a small amount of wellbeing data sets in them, and that often then what data sets for wellbeing, they're not well designed in terms of getting the right information out of those data sets to help you to improve well-being. Employee well-being surveys are a much more effective way to survey for well-being, and making sure that they're tailored to your strategic well-being pillars so that you know if these are your well-being pillars and they're built around your employee well-being and your demographics, that you're asking specific questions around employee well-being so that you can use that data to improve well-being in your pillars. Then we've got the Management Standards Questionnaire, which is another great survey to help you to recognize where work-related stress is being impacted and how to create an action plan on how to tackle that. So that's just 2 specific surveys to improve employee well-being, focusing on your well-being pillars and preventing work-related stress. Data and feedback on initiatives like your mental health first aid style programs, your well-being campaigns. You know, we see a lot of hard work being put into well-being campaigns from well-being leads and HR professionals. You know, it's Mental Health Awareness Day, it's Well-being Week, it's Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. There's lots of work being done to put campaigns out there, but how do you know if it's effective? It's the so what. Yes, we've done all of this, but so what? How many people have we reached? How many people then clicked on the information to gauge what support's available? How many people turned up to your activity? And what was their feedback on that? Did they enjoy it? Would they come again? Is there something else that they would like to see in terms of their well-being? Being able to reflect on that and then take a continuous improvement mindset to again engage in always making improvements around mental health and well-being. Then we've got your employee listening strategy, where, you know, we see this often missing in terms of that you're talking about improving employees' well-being. Yet if we're not listening to them, we're not hearing them, we're not considering them in decision making on their well-being. You want to help them improve their well-being. Well, surely we need to ask them what parts of their well-being do they want to improve and how do they want to improve it? And even what barriers are going to prevent them from engaging in all of the things that you're going to implement in terms of your well-being strategy. Sickness, absence, and turnover. These are really, really great indicators on any trends, things that really need your attention, because these are often going to be around, you know, why are people going off sick? How do we actually prevent that from happening in the first place? And again, listening to your employee exit interviews as well. You know, why are people wanting to leave? What do we need to do as an organization to make those changes? So there's just a couple there, but the main part today is going to be over to Charlie. Charlie is going to talk to you really about how we can use technology to collect data, analyze data, evidence your return on investment, and get that employee engagement. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides. Yay, there we go. Hi, Charlie. You can see your face now.
Hello. Yes. So I'm going to start sharing in a second. Just as a kind of caveat to start with, I think a lot of the insight that I'm going to share is around use cases, around even conversations with organizations that I haven't worked with. I've seen kind of real tangible effects or changes. But some of the things to caveat it with are like wellbeing leads, HR leads, people leads, organizations like COOs. Everyone is going through a kind of, I suppose it's a crisis of responsibility, because quite often we see organizations that are under budgeted, under resourced, and there's a lot of things added onto people's roles. So it's about essentially trying to find a balance of how do we help those leads to automate the things that they can automate that can help them in this process, but build a framework or a structure for an organization to have real-time continuous engagement, learning and listening, where you can kind of build, measure, learn an impact strategy around well-being. Because at the same time, this is quite a lot of pressure that's put onto leads of teams in organizations, where in fact the stigma around mental health or well-being, or in fact even just employee engagement strategies, the stigma around it means that, you know, there's no accountability for the employees. It's all kind of us versus them. And I find that that's something that needs to change as well. We found that in a research project in the NHS with frontline healthcare workers, where digital intervention reduced burnout and compassion fatigue, which were 2 of the main things that the NHS are trying to achieve on a wide scale. But the limitations were the same as every organization I've seen. There wasn't enough time to do these things. When they did take time out, they were then stressed and overworked from the other things that they did. And the data and insights weren't used to affect any change or even acknowledge the employee voice that was in that organization. So it's about kind of building a framework or culture where it's built around person-centered support, and it's easier done through technology rather than individual conversations. Technology is a vehicle for making change, and there's 2 or 3 different techniques I can show you around even the devil word AI and things like that, as long as it's validated and safe and done in the right way. There are ways that we can make the lives of employees easier, but also the leads being able to have a structured way of reporting, of data collection, and understanding actually what their responsibilities are, and actually trying to help on that side, because it can be overwhelming when you're like, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to do this. And quite often organizations will see it as, well, you've got no wellbeing budget, you've got limited wellbeing budget. How can we reposition this as operational budget, as recruitment budget, as retention budget, rather than, just solely on, okay, well, you've got X amount of money to provide campaigns, surveys, workshops, all these sort of brilliant things, and actually consolidate it all. So I'm going to share my screen in a second. Let me just see. I am very technologically savvy, believe it or not. So there's a lot of information on this, but I'm going to give you some real case studies of around essentially employee engagement and voice and mental health support. So there's a lot of information here, but I'm going to summarize quite quickly on each of these, and I will be sending this through to Emily so everyone can have access if they'd like to. I've obviously removed the organization's names to kind of talk about these situations and the case studies. So the first one on the left, case study 1, we were working with a forensic science firm around employee well-being as a first and foremost. Now, they came to us from a position of they'd had increased sickness and they were losing quite a lot of members of staff. How do we engage people? How do we get it when, people are going, well, we do a survey once a year and we never see the results of it, which is not necessarily the fault of the organization. They've just got so many things going on. So we rolled out the OK Positive platform in this situation, had relatively good engagement on getting people involved. The keys being complete anonymity and data privacy and aggregated data. So make sure that whenever you're creating something, whether it's a survey, it is anonymous, not confidential. The other side of it was we need to incentivize employees to use things rather than saying, the old Amazon survey of how did you find your purchase today? When you haven't even got your gift yet, you're giving them information and data insight and you're not getting anything for it. So actually, how do we then reposition it that we're engaging and surveying people without necessarily having to, just offering them information that they want to learn about from an organization, and then automating that data reporting of going, what questions are people asking for? What are they needing more support on? What resources are they finding useful in an organization? So we worked with this forensic science firm. Within 5 weeks, we'd had about 1,500 data points across 130 users that signed up out of their 191. And we identified the main area was the IT system that they were using. So the well-being of their staff was being impacted because of an IT system being slow and making them overwork for an hour a day. And this is something that we saw from the feedback that was happening for 6 months previously, which is something that hasn't clearly changed anytime soon. So the intervention was the leadership kind of decided we're going to get in a consultant to come fix the IT system. We'll do an audit of it and then see actually if it's not fit for purpose, we'll change. If not, we're just going to have spent money on an IT consultant to come in and work on the system. Within 5 weeks later, the new IT system had kind of been revamped. We had a 10% increase in engagement of staff. We had another 50 people sign up to the platform through word of mouth because something that they'd been struggling with for 6 months was fixed within 5 weeks of using the platform. And they had an increase in mood scores, which we do through our platform. I know there are some that do it. But essentially, this is like, and everyone goes, okay, this is great kind of, and I just saw a comment there saying it's quick. But ultimately, you don't have to do this all the time. It's just looking at significant trends over periods of time and going, right, well, this is something we actually should take seriously, rather than everyone's complaining they've not been paid as much as they wanted to, or, they don't like the working hours, things that not necessarily you can do for everyone. So we were actually looking at an increased productivity for that organization, and they signed up for 2 years with us on another project. So it's kind of looking at that example. The next would be a charity that we worked with in the UK as well. We had over 84% sign up. One of the things I'd always highlight if you're doing surveys is show them the data and the results. So some of the organizations we work with will do a survey and we'll do it for them, or we'll look at it for them and we'll report the data. So there's an added level of anonymity if they're a bit smaller. But essentially this is what everyone's saying. Are you aligned with that? Because then the people that aren't engaging in the survey are saying, actually, I should have, because they're doing something about this or they're engaging us in it. And so what we did is we found over 8 weeks, 120 data points. It was a smaller organization. We found that there was a division that was struggling with targets, and they were struggling with the KPIs and management structure from that department, to which they did 3 kind of great interventions. So they found that the walking meetings that they were doing were helping, like getting a physical activity boost. The second was emergency management training, and then changing the structure of meetings and the way that that manager was speaking to the whole department. And then a notification sent out to all of the people that had been reporting surveys saying that these are the areas that we're focused on. Kind of build, measure, learn. This is what you said, this is what we're doing. Let us know if it works or not, because that's the key. It's measuring that impact. And so they saw a 13% increase in engagement, increased mood, which is, once again, these are data reports that they can export and go, look, we are actually doing what we say, that we are actually listening to our staff. And we saved them approximately £32,000 in rehiring and training costs, because the feedback and comments were this was something that had been going on long before we'd been working with them, and the people were at the end of their tether. But actually what we're finding now is they stayed for another 18 months. And that kind of difference is hard to quantify to an organization and say, look, I'll give you actually insight. They're spending less than £100 a month on what we're doing, and they save that amount of money. So it's how do you position that to get budget from your senior leadership to actually go, it's about what we're achieving through these interventions. And the intervention's the key, not necessarily the technology itself. It's just a vehicle to do so. Another one was a marketing agency that we worked with, more looking around working environment and culture, which I know is a topic that people here are really interested in. So once again, showing people, talking about why they should be looking at mental health and well-being, why we should build anonymous feedback into our working lives, why essentially, I call it the toothbrush analogy. Your parents teach you need to brush your teeth. You don't necessarily want to do it every day, but you do it because it's good for you. Same thing can be said of businesses. We do small talk at the start of a meeting. We talk about, how the weekend was, which is great for culture. But at the same time, imagine if we spend half a minute to go, right, what's going well at work for you today? What's not? How can we change this? And then at the end of the month, look at that data as a team, or as a business unit, or as a whole organization, to go, this is what we're all feeling. This is the areas that we're going to improve in, continuous improvement. And so we found that there were 100% response rates on those employee satisfaction surveys within 48 hours. And that's where technology kind of helps it. If you can make it quicker, it's easier for you to report, but it's also easier for you to take action. And it will surprise employees when things are going quicker. Just always does. You get, we've actually been listened to. But it also raised issues of inadequate office resources. And that's the key bit. The intervention is always the most important area, which is where management arranged for the kind of a workload reallocation to relieve pressure, because there were 40% of the staff that were struggling with overworking. The management also restructured the meeting rooms and schedule. And so they actually also added in some equipment as well, which went down very well, because that was one of the kind of small things that people were wanting that they could do quickly. And so what we're starting to see is that mood scores would increase from 59% to 78%. We can actually go, look, this actually had a tangible benefit within 5 weeks of doing this. And so it's a build, measure, learn experience. And the final bit is we did a research project, as I mentioned, and essentially we're looking at, are digital interventions useful? Because quite often people will go, we've got a wellbeing app. A wellbeing app is only as good as the inputs that people are putting in. How do we incentivize people to input? Well, we listen to what they're looking for. And what we found across organizations, which I'll show you just now, I'll share my screen here. AI scares a lot of people, always tends to, scares me and the capabilities of what it does. However, if it's sealed off and it can only work within parameters that you set it, so validated information. And what we've found is the most interesting thing is that we can now learn about what areas people are looking for, because it's completely anonymous and private. We know that health anxiety is one of the main areas. Family issues are another area, in supporting young families or carers. Another is financial well-being, which I saw on the data here as well, and insights. Another is sleep being a big common factor, but it's nothing to do with work, and workplace management and communication. So then what you can do is you can build in all of that information and resource within AI so that automates the process. So what does that mean in reality? Essentially, what do employees really want to know when they're at work to help them do their jobs? Well, it's all the training that they need, all of the information and policies, holiday systems, management, all the systems that you have in place already in terms of business operation that can make their lives easier. There's nothing worse than going, oh, I don't know how to use this system, or I don't know how do I log a holiday? How do I prepare for a meeting with my manager about appraisals? Well, then what you do is you dump all of that knowledge into an AI system. And what you do is you preview it. So I'll show you here where people can go, I've got an appraisal meeting with my manager that I am stressed about and need to know what will happen and how to manage this myself. And what we do is we start asking these questions, and essentially by providing an insight and knowledge about how to deal with that appraisal process, and this will pull from your own information about appraisal processes or validated sources or partners that specify in that area. It will also talk about things that are relevant to them, and it will then connect them to either content and support or learning about time management deadlines. How do I present this? How do I present myself to my manager? And that information is really useful for that employee because it's getting them what they need instantly. And on the back end, you're able to then look at data insight of what areas that people are struggling with, how their moods change, what are the correlations between anxiety and workload, and then how our moods improving or not, and essentially use this data to go, right, well, we can see that certain things that people are struggling with, certain comments that they're saying break my workload up, high volume of meetings. We've seen things, even those organizations that aren't using our technology are finding ways of going, right, well, Monday morning meetings are the main stress because people work on a Sunday to do them. We're trying to find ways of going, well, okay, use that data insight, say, well, let's push meetings to 12 on a Monday and see what the impact is, announce it, communicate it. And so AI is not something we should be afraid of here. It's about going, okay, well, if we've got all of this information and resources that are in sporadic systems that will help employees, let's encourage them to use this sort of service or a service that will give them that information bespoke to the needs of what they need at that time. And then on the back end, we can learn from the data insight of every question that's asked, the trends. So we can see what everyone's asking about financial well-being or cost of living. Everyone's asking about workplace communication. Right, this is where we should invest our money. Send out an announcement to everyone. We are, based on the insight of our culture, we are going to be investing in workplace communication training, and then see what people say about it. And then suddenly you're creating an environment and a culture of people that are listened to, but also providing their voice because they know it's a safe place to do so. And so that's kind of, I know it's an awful lot of information, but what I'm trying to kind of build across here is that technology is a vehicle for people to use, specifically leads in organizations, to automate bits that probably bog down their day. And when I speak to HR and people in wellbeing leads, it's always individual questions about, what's the holiday policy? What's the maternity policy? What's this? What's the menopause thing? What training do we have? What support is there? Imagine just being able to have this base of knowledge, input that into technology and say, this is your hub for any questions that you have around this workplace. And then also you can bolt in mental health services, physical health services, whatever it is that you provide. And on the back end, then that leaves you a real-time engagement tool to go, actually, this is the areas that people are struggling with. And it might just surprise you that, you set up, it maybe once a month, and maybe once a quarter, maybe however it works for you in a workload, to go, right, what are we going to do about this? And involve the people in the organization as much as you can. I'll give you a couple more examples. There was one around the negative side of getting feedback from employees. An organization that we work with after COVID had provided everyone a 2% increase in their pay, which did not match inflation. And their reasoning was the business hadn't performed. We'd have to fire people to top up salaries. And they were like, well, we can't do anything about this. This isn't working. We don't know what to do about it. So I was like, well, transparency is the key. Send out a notification explaining the reasons why. And you could see feedback coming through saying, these are the reasons why I didn't want my teammates to be fired. I'd have to double my workload to cover it just for more money. But they did say, look, we're going to bring appraisals forward by 3 months, seeing how the business is performing so that we can look at salaries again. So it's kind of not, you can't be everything to everyone, but also make it a manageable process that you can report on. And that, I think, is probably enough of me talking about it. I think it's probably best to get questions or input and things like that.
Thanks, Charlie. So please do put any questions in the chat box for Charlie. I have a couple. In terms of, it sounds like there are two areas around employee well-being. The work impact on employee well-being. What is the work that is impacted on employee well-being? So you mentioned workload there. We know that relationships within teams can cause work-related stresses. We know that change, you mentioned change, that IT change, huge work-related stress for people. Communication, poor communication, these are all key areas of work-related stresses that once identified, we can then create an action plan on how to change that, which is very, very easy to do once you've got that data and these are some of the things that you're able to do because you are part of the impact. Whereas some of the other things you talked about, Charlie, was health anxiety, that people were worried about their families, their finances, and their sleep. What were you finding in terms of, is that more of a challenge to help people to change those things that aren't necessarily being caused by the workplace?
Yeah, so and I think we can all resonate with this, or know someone who resonates with this, in the sense of, you turn up to work, you've got a big deadline, a marketing deadline, whatever it may be that you're doing. Your son's getting bullied at school, who's struggling at the moment, or just had an ADHD diagnosis, and you don't really know information on it. Now, it's not necessarily a workplace's kind of responsibility to be able to educate you on that. But however, if you can have resources and tools and services that they can type in, because essentially you're stressed about things, you get health anxiety because you don't know the information, you don't know what to expect, it's the unknown. So actually, if someone can go, okay, what are the symptoms of ADHD? What can I do to help my son? And it gives them tangible things to do, services that they can go to, and things they can put in place to have that conversation. They're less likely to be stressing about that while they're at work. They can go, okay, right, I know what I'm going to do when I get home tonight, when I see him, and now I can get on with my work, because they're not overthinking, anxious, and stressing about it. And that's just one scenario of a multitude of thousands of different things that people go through in their lives. It's not necessarily an operational lead or a people lead or a wellbeing lead's responsibility to be able to go and do that on every level. But we're kind of setting that up by saying, we've got mental health first aiders. They'll listen to you. I had spoke with an organization that's very famous for being quite rubbish to their employees, and they had mental health first aiders, and actually had one of the best models of it, of going, actually, instead of taking people who are passionate about mental health and giving them extra work to do, and then going, okay, what happens if one of your mental health first aiders has a marketing deadline at lunchtime, and someone comes up to them talking about how they're feeling really, really stressed, or at crisis point? What do? Do you prioritize the 30 minutes before your deadline for your job, or do you sit and spend, well, half an hour, which isn't even enough time, with that person? You need to put in those things that protect those people as well. And that's where you can automate NHS information, healthcare information, physical health, so the way that we do it is we work with charity partners, we work with NHS, we work with all these different areas outside of work, that they can ask the same question. They can ask for a health plan, they can ask for a physical plan. What happens during a blood test? What do I do about this? Bring that validated information to them so they can get on with their jobs while they're at the workplace and not stress about it. Because there's a line. It's not there's no gray area between there for workplaces.
Yeah. Thanks, Charlie. I think we had a question from Erin. Erin, do you want to come in?
Hi. Thanks. I was just about to type to Emma, sorry. Charlie, I love AI, and it's so good to see it being used for good. I'm actually in Australia, so I'm not going to turn my video on because I'm in my pajamas. But I just wanted to quickly ask you, with the Oki, what would happen if there was someone that was at crisis point, or if there was some certain words that alarm bells should be really ringing and helping that person straight away?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The one thing that people are scared about AI, and I was speaking to integrated care at the NHS about this, is like, if you go into ChatGPT, you can theoretically ask it how to take your own life, and it can pull from the internet and make suggestions. So not safe, not good. Leave that out. That's why they're so scared of it. However, It's a caring AI assistant that takes information from NHS, all of the suicide prevention charities. It will not only start talking to them about, look, we care about you, we know you're struggling. It can even take the data from their mood check-ins in our platform to go, look, you're like 20% week on week now. You're really struggling. We think you need to get some more support in these areas. We care about you. Please contact here, and take them straight through to it. So that's one area of, on the individual side, you've got to protect privacy, but at the same time, get them that information at the right area at the right time. On the other side, work with an organization that will see if they are, and this is a big piece of work we're doing with our clinical team, is if you're seeing worrying or concerning things, it's in the control of the person, but they want to probably get support if they're saying something in an anonymous platform.
Yes.
So therefore, firstly, giving it to them instantly at that stage, showing care and empathy is a great start point, but also working with an organization to go, right, push out a notification like we do as standard to every user if we see concerning things. Say, look, we care about you. We don't know who you are, but if you want to be identified on a one-off basis, you can stick your first and last name in, or you can reach out directly to us. It's showing that element of human care of going, look, you need us. This is what we'll do, and this is how we'll help.
Thanks.
So it's creating that process to keep it safe. Because there was a lot of work done around this, speaking to the health and safety executive, a story of a gentleman that was at crisis point and was considering taking their life and was actually going through the process. Just got an alert on their phone, a little message came through, went, you know, I'll check the message. It was his friend asking him to go meet him for a coffee. I went, you know what, I might as well. Opened up to him, told him about it, and got support. So it's the tech, once again, didn't save that guy, but it got him to a place where he needed to go to be saved, or to save himself, essentially. So it's all about accessibility and instant accessibility to information that will help people.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Charlie. I've got another question, because as you've seen, one of the other biggest challenges, apart from data collection, was employee engagement. How do you increase employee engagement? Because once they're engaged in the app, amazing. How do you get that engagement? How do you really increase employee engagement in something like this to start off with?
Different areas. So whether you're using an app or not, or however you're doing things, there's different things. Like, you've got to think about it. Like, you know, when you get a sales message from someone on LinkedIn, you know, you listen to the ones that resonate with you or go, oh, I quite like the way they've done that. Same thing happens in employee engagement of, firstly, there's a stigma, so people won't want to talk about things. So anonymity, privacy. The next thing is incentivization. So some organizations will create teams and go, the more you engage, you win X, Y, and Z, put that into the kind of T&E budget sort of thing, miscellaneous budget. The next is building it into the culture. So one of the things, some of the best organizations we work with, no matter how big, will go, right, Monday and Friday, every stand-up meeting, every manager knows, we're all, including the managers, most importantly, we're all going to log what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, what we need more of. And we promise you at the end of the month or end of the quarter, we're going to look at that data, we're going to share it with you to go, these are the priorities. And then doing something is the bit that engages them properly. If you do it quickly, we always recommend companies that work with us to go, like, within 2 weeks, make a decision, no matter how small it is. Is it like people have said, you know, we want less one-to-one meetings with managers? Just announce it. Say, you know what, we're going to try this and see what happens. And suddenly you've got this buzz of, right, things are going to happen. Then you set expectations of going, look, this is a culture where we always want your voice, no matter when, how many times a day you want to do it, you do it. You've got time. If you're logging in this platform, your feedback will always take it. And the third is making it automated. So actually giving people information the same way that like a Netflix or an Amazon or a Google will learn about data insight, is they'll just learn from the fact that, okay, well, what's someone Googling for? Right, let's look at the common themes. Same thing, let's create a hub where people want to find information, because employees will want to know how to book a holiday, how to do this, how to do whatever. And if you give them that ability to do that and automate the reporting from that and aggregate it, once again, make it anonymous, you're suddenly going to start seeing data surveys without having to ask questions, because you're seeing what people are looking for, what they're asking for, what you can learn quite quickly. If people are all asking for, what do I do about a meeting with my manager? It's fairly safe to say that they're all worried about manager meetings. So it's just them looking for information and you're learning from it. So those are kind of different areas that you can do it, but incentivization, motivation, build it into culture, and set expectations.
Okay, brilliant. So we're up to 12:53. We've got a couple of minutes left before I share my final slides. Charlie, your 3 biggest top tips for wellbeing leads in terms of employee data collection and analysis. After everything that you've talked about there, what are the 3 most important things that they can take away today?
So don't overwhelm yourselves. Find a structure that works for you. Anything is better than nothing is my first thing, just for you as personal, on a personal side. Secondly, make sure that you are creating a set expectation of what you are going to achieve and what you're going to do. So if you say you're going to do a survey and you're going to report on it, just make sure you make it as apparent as possible and find different ways to communicate it, not just an email or a newsletter. Make sure it is personal, you're talking about it, you're engaging people both in person, online, in calls, everything, and celebrate that. And the third would be just make sure you're armed with as many resources as you can that are relevant for your staff. So if they're saying things, you're building a picture for your senior leadership or your C-suite or whoever it is that you're reporting to. Say, look, this isn't just well-being, because well-being has sadly been positioned as, you know, yoga, fruit, things like that in the office. Position it as this is business critical, business operational. Even scare them with things like ESG regulation. This is important. Build it under those areas, and then you're building a picture of actually this is something much larger for the kind of senior leadership. So those would be the 3 things.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. I'm just going to squeeze back over to our slides. So, I haven't seen any questions in the chat box. Does anyone have any final questions for Charlie before we end the session? No? Okay, so this is where you can find Charlie. This is the website, okpositive.org. You can find Charlie on LinkedIn. Charlie's super active on LinkedIn, always sharing great content. So do go and connect and follow him on there. And if you'd like to speak to him directly, his email is charlie@okpositive.co.uk. I am going to follow up with an email so that you've got all of Charlie's information as well. And I'll also follow up with a couple of links from our next 2 webinars. So we've got a webinar coming up tomorrow on supporting employees with hormonal health issues, and we're looking at premenstrual dysphoric disorder, we're looking at perimenopause and menopause, and our special guest tomorrow is Myth Menopause and the lovely Sharon MacArthur. Come along, she's hilarious, you'll love her. So I will send you over the links to that webinar. And also the one we've coming up on September around understanding gambling addiction in the workplace as well. Just to let you know, enrollment is now open for our level 5 mental health and wellbeing diploma. And I've just noticed we've got 2 diploma students in the session today, which is great to see you still engaged in workplace wellbeing. Our level 5 diploma is designed exclusively for wellbeing leads and HR professionals. It starts in September and it covers everything that you need to know to develop and deliver an impactful mental health and wellbeing strategy by integrating it with your strategy, your pillars, your data collection, your action plan for the next 3 years and how you're going to achieve your wellbeing goals, how to empower your people managers for wellbeing excellence as they are critical in terms of wellbeing culture. We also cover strategies for your impactful wellbeing initiatives. So things like how to leverage your mental health first aid style programs, how to create a strategy for your wellbeing campaigns and collect data and feedback to improve them as well. We also cover cultivating a culture of wellbeing excellence. So once we've actually created a strategy, how do we embed it for that longer term culture change? And you'll be involved with an amazing group of peers who are all doing the same thing in developing and delivering effective mental health and wellbeing strategy throughout the diploma as well. So I will pop a link to the diploma for more information in the email. Enrollment closes in 4 weeks' time and starts on the 1st of September. So thank you very much for joining us today.